There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone to another session with the V's, so as we've been calling it. It feels like only yesterday that we've had a variety of different sessions. I can't believe it's already we're at the point where we have both Tony and Nicki together. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Munro-Jones. I'm the Operations Director for the IAPC&M, and I'm also the current Acting Head of Accreditation. I've introduced Nicki and Tony separately on a number of different occasions. Today, the title of their talk and question and answer, and forgive me, I need to take my glasses off for this, is very much about an opportunity to ask them the questions that you really want to ask. And I have to be honest and say, so I have lots that I'm prepared to ask. Let me tell you a little bit more about Tony and Nicki together. They met way back in 2003 when they were both traveling the world as coaches for Anthony Robbins, or Tony Robbins, which is potentially a question that I would like to ask and come back to. At that time, Nicki Vees was a corporate coach earning 6 figures in her first year. For those of you who want to learn more about that, Nicki had an excellent webinar about the perils and the pitfalls of being a corporate coach, which many people learned loads from, and I certainly include myself in that. I've still got notes to one side. The universe threw them together. Within a year, they'd started their Happy House Events business and their relationship retreat in the Lower Alps of Austria. Hundreds of couples and singles attended this life-changing experience. They still, to this day, some 19 years later, have semi-retired work with couples to help save their marriage, stop the rot, and find the love and intimacy that we all, both men and women, utterly desire. Their legacy product, their couples intimate relationship education program, it's clearly easy to say, so it rolls off the tongue. Trust will always be available even when they've moved on to another plane of existence in self-study format. Way back in 2006, when Tony and Nicki's clients kept asking, please can you teach me to coach like you do, they firstly created their Coach the Coach training, and in 2011 they created their Master Coach training company. Their 2-day IAPC&M Level 4 certified training events have certified well over 1,500 people, and their Level 5 accredited Master Coach 5-day event and year-long program certified some 250 people up until Nicki Vees retired in 2018. Nicki and Tony consider themselves Master Coach trainers and intimate relationship experts. Guys, welcome. Before we start, thank you for all the insight and the information that you have provided over the previous weeks. The floor will be open for anybody to ask questions either through the chat box or or by raising hands. But I thought an interesting question from my perspective would be for you to tell us in your own words, how do your approaches differ from each other, and how do you bring that together when you're working with couples, for example?
Great question.
It's a very good question.
No one's ever asked us that before.
No, I think, well, obviously we have individual answers. We very rarely give the same answer because we are individuals that are sharing a life. So I think, the dynamic of us is quite interesting because we obviously are man and women. So, we see the world. I always say men see the world through blue glasses, girls see the world, through pink glasses. So, whenever we're looking at something, we are seeing it from a different perspective just because of that. And of course, we bring our individual program into that as well. So our upbringing, if you're into past lives, you chuck that in as well. So you've got your whole individuality. That once you're in a relationship, well, obviously Nicki's a bit of an expert in DISC, of course. So that, personality style, you also bring that. So everything about us is different. But I think what I would say is that our personal development journey followed a sort of similar line. We're sort of a bit like train lines. Nicki was on one of the two lines, I was on the other. And that's why I believe we got thrown together. You know, if you consistently run in a parallel life, you are going to meet people that are having a similar experience. It's one of my fun stories, which is I described my old world life before I met Nicki, before I did personal development. I lived in London and described it as the radio station I was listening to was Capital, which, you know, on the FM scale was 95.8. So at 95.8, if you tune into 95.8, you get Capital, you don't get anything else. And because I lived in London, I lived that life, I call it my old life, without having any knowledge of personal, spiritual development. I just thought I was doing the right thing, which was to work hard, you know, earn a load of money, you know, get a big house, get a great car, and you'd all be happy. Sorry, that's that. It's got a H on it, happy, but my Croydon slipped in there, so you take the H off. You know, of course, when I've discovered personal development, I found, this is a bit cheesy, but I realised that you've got a dial. You know, you've got the ability to live in different frequencies, different energy, some people call it. It's all a bit woo-woo. But I always say I turned my dial up to 105.4, which, if you've ever been in London, that is where Magic FM happens. So, you know, you can't be in Magic FM and, you know, Capital Radio at the same time. So you sort of choose. And when I chose, I remember my whole life changing, literally everything about my life. So many of the people that I knew just drifted out of my life. And I met a whole new bunch of people who were talking a different game, living a different life, you know, in a different energy. And this is the very cheesy bit. I always say, I thought, well, now I found Magic FM, I'll see what else is a bit further up the dial. And I found 106.2, which is in London is Heart FM. Yeah. And I always say that's when I met Nicki, because she was listening to Heart FM as well. So it is a bit cheesy, but it's actually quite a good metaphor for life, because I do believe that so many people are stuck in a frequency, and that's all they see, because they don't know they've got a dial. And once you discover you've got a dial, you want to have a little play with it, yeah? And if you get stuck, normally your dial's stuck, or you've forgotten you've got one. So I think that's, for me, hopefully that's answered the question reasonably well, that, you know, we found or were thrown together because we were at that same frequency.
Very nice. Well, you've just given me one of the examples of how we work differently. So Tony very much is the, I'm going to call it, tell me if this is unfair in any way, untrained coach, if you like. And I'm kind of more the classic trained coach. And Tony kind of have obviously had training like I did with Tony Robbins and things like that, but also has always had his own unique style, mostly telling stories, using metaphors. I think that was one of the sessions that you did, David, last week, was alternative coaching methods, and you had me on doing, you know, those two alternative coaching methods masterclasses will have been so different because of what Tony's just demoed, right? So I think first of all, I agree with him. Obviously, we were on a similar path. But secondly, Tony's more of a moving feast. He's more in the moment than I am. He's more like, he'll come up with, like, he'll have some sort of, or he'll see somebody do like an NLP process. He's not NLP trained, and then he'll twist and turn it and use it and change it and use it himself, and it will have his name all over it. I am definitely more of a classical coach, but very much classical in the Tony Robbins world. In the way that so much of coaching that was taught, and I know this is contentious, had a very sort of superficial kind of questions, like a planning method, like the GROW model, things like that. Whereas when I went first to Tony Robbins, I learned a lot more dynamic methods, much more stronger, more as a coach, more as a leader, more as a person that goes. So my reputation is, if you want your ass kicked, if you want somebody to make sure that you go away with your problem resolved, sorted, or whatever you call it, which is why, you know, I just asked Sue and Viv, you know, my favorite question, which is what's critical, not what would you like to talk about today, but what's critical for you to resolve right now, this moment. That's more my style. But what's so funny when we work together, which is interesting that you said that, was that we work together in our unique styles. I mean, obviously we teach masculine and feminine energy as well. And sometimes I can get a little bit, let's call it high dominance rather than masculine. But yeah, that the truth is it's quite masculine energy in order to get some sort of somebody to come out of their trance, you know. And Tony goes, but that's what you're here on the planet for. So he doesn't find it like, Nicki's being more masculine here. He goes, that's what you're here for. That's what they need. But what is so funny is because Tony's sort of seen as the nice one.
Good cop, bad cop.
They always see him as the good cop, and he's very loving and he takes time for them. And whereas I'm going, stop talking, tell me what you really need and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sort of the bad cop. But then when he turns on some leverage, which obviously is big Tony Robbins thing. And if I'm really honest, I think that many people have said to me that our master coach training, which of course, as you said, we retired that in 2018, but we have it, people can still study it online at level 4, obviously. What we found was that some people said to me, what you teach in Master Coach is kind of a formatted way that Robbins teaches. So Robbins he's got loads of models, he's got loads of methods, but he's got something called the 7 Master Steps, but it's philosophical, not actually gives you a framework to coach with. So the V coaching strategy is a framework to coach with, but what we've added, and there's always a debate in the V household, who actually designed this a bit. So we decided we both did. We always do that. Is that I nearly said my then, right? Was my realization that without cause and effect questions, coaches were trying, including me, were trying to help people resolve their issues by yes, good questions, yes, even great questions with some leverage, like what is going to happen in the future if you don't get it handled, type leverage, right? I realized that if you're trying to coach the problem and it's outside the individual, you're missing a huge part of coaching, which is why I've always gone on to teach people how I've got a series of questions, which not many people have, because it was towards the end of my teaching time, which are a series of questions which you use to help people very gently at the beginning and then perhaps not so gently towards the end, have an understanding of how they are contributing to their problems and issues. So that's our different styles. I'm all about leverage, I'm all about cause and effect, I'm all about like the strong question. You know, one of my early mentors, Marianne Parianti, I said, this coaching is so complicated. She says, no, it's easy. You ask her, she would have said this because she's French. She would ask, you ask a fucking awesome question, Nicki V, and then you coach the arse out of the answer. And honestly, I mean, since we've been away, I've been full on coaching, haven't I? Yeah. And I remember that every time. I go, stop trying to think of what you're doing in the forward and literally question the answer, because that's where the magic is. And the magic is in their answer and their facial, which is why I prefer Zoom.
Yeah, we ended up creating this methodology, which we don't use that often, to be honest. Perhaps we should use it a little bit more. We definitely use it on ourselves. Everything we've ever learned or done, we always test it on ourselves first. Yeah. Anyway, we went to Cyprus once. We helped this couple, and they loved it so much. They said, "Oh, we've got this like villa in Cyprus, and would you like to have it? You can have it for a couple of weeks. It's it's all free on the house." So off we go. Anyway, we get there. We're not Cyprus fans, I have to say. Bless it. So it is the country that it is.
It's a mess.
Don't mince your words there, Nicki. You just tell it how it is.
All we have done since the minute we got to Sicily is go, it's just like Cyprus. It's a nice thing.
they need to get a grant from the EU to sort out their roads and their paths because they are abominable. Yeah. Anyway, we wouldn't let people drive on
Don't
roads.
get started
Anyway,
about that.
so we're in Cyprus, and believe it or not, neither of us are sunbathers or sun worshippers. We don't like the sun. We don't like the heat. One of the things we're always saying, and it's always a funny one because we leave the H off, is it's too hot. It's too hot. We can't breathe. Anyway, so of course we always inside with the aircon on and only go out a little bit and have a quick mooch around and go back. Anyway, one day we're in Cyprus. It's way too hot to go outside. So this couple had these two settees which were in an L-shaped formation, and we invented this methodology, should we call it? And it's funny, I even used the what do you call it when you have the acronym?
Yes.
Today, yeah, because it's so powerful thing to do. So anyway, it's called, basically what you do as the coach is you
only ask one
question
the whole time that you're with the person.
So you bring up the problem, whatever the problem is, and then the question is got a bit of swearing in it, so we won't use the swear word, but it's the coach just asks, how is that all your effing fault?
Right.
It's a very powerful question.
It's like the extremist cause and effect question.
So it is a cause and effect question, because what it does is it fairly gets the person to look at themselves. Because when somebody tells you their story, something to notice as a coach, which I find incredible, is that they are never, the story always has them as the goodie. They're always the goodie, and something outside of them, very commonly a person, is the baddie. So of course they tell the story, as we said, from their perception, and their perception will always delete any fault, any blame on them. And that's the magic of coaching, really. Yeah?
And one of the things I just want to add to that is that one of the things I learned loads and loads of years ago is if you're going to go out of rapport with a client or an audience, you know, if you're really brave, you'll do this with an audience of people. If you're going to go out of rapport, you need to be in massive rapport when you
go out
before you go out of rapport. So you have to be in so much rapport with someone that they will allow you to ask them the toughest questions that you can have.
Yeah.
But I've got one more just quick thing to share, which I think can be very useful for people to understand. And that is both our journeys were personal development and spiritual development. So for example, both of us started off with Tony Robbins, doing lots of his events, working for him as crew and as coaches and things. But then both of us found another mentor who was more sharing with us the esoteric view of life, the other than conscious, the super conscious of this or that. And mine was Brandon Bays, which is obviously, you know, I do a lot of the coach training I've done. I've also shared with people how to use those kind of therapeutic intervention stuff. But NLP-ish, of course. And Tony's has also been very much about the, you know, the different dimensions, the superconscious, the everything from Arcturian philosophy to, you know, you name it, he's been that far that way. And two things happened to me, which sound like I'm showing off, so bear with me, but I promise you I'm not, is I was working as a coach for Tony Robbins when 9/11 happened, and I was in Hawaii with 2,000 people, mostly Americans. We'd been there we were on a 9-day event, and after 4 days, 9/11 happened. And to say that that was one of the biggest stretches I've ever had as a coach was, you know, you've got people literally with every different feeling and emotion and craziness that was going on. And we were, you know, expected as coaches, of course, to help them come to terms with it, reframe it, whatever they needed to do. And one of the lead trainers actually came up to me in the melee of everything on the morning of 9/11 and said to me, "Thank God you're here." And I was sort of, well, thank you. You know, I didn't know what she meant. And she said, "Because you have trained with Tony Robbins for all these years, but you also know how to do therapeutic interventions." And because I'm a very, like, I'm high dominance profile, I'm a very, you know, Tony Robbins always says, if you can't deal with something in 5 minutes, you're not a decent coach, and then goes on to spend 4.5 hours doing an intervention. And because I'm from that school, I even use therapeutic interventions in very short times. So I actually did one this week, which was 15 minutes, 20 minutes maximum, which is normally a 2-hour intervention. And Tony, the same, he will bring into it like he's a sound healer. He works with crystals. We've often bought lots and lots of things. But the other thing that happened was I was with Brandon as a trainer for her, Brandon Bays, and somebody freaked out in a room of like 500 people, and everybody's doing therapy with their eyes closed and whispering very nicely as they do on these spiritual events. And her husband came running into the coffee place where I was and said, Nicki Brannan, as I was then, can you come, please? There's a woman freaking out in the middle and it's chaotic and nobody can deal with her. She's got, you know, she's being, what do you call it when you've got?
Abusive.
No, yes, of course. What do you call it when you've got things going inside you, like you're invaded by other...
Oh, yeah. She needs
I can't remember. Anyway, she was thinking that she'd got other beings inside of her, or that kind of shit, right? And so yeah, well, I didn't do an exorcism. But anyway, so she possessed. Thank you, Vivian Joy. Possessed by some sort of devil or something, and she's freaking out, shouting and swearing, and everybody else is all like, ooh. And so I have literally gone out, and as I'm walking to this room with Kevin, Brandon's husband, I've gone, I don't like to sound rude here, but you've got all the master trainers in there. I'm like a part-time trainer. I come occasionally. He said, yeah, but you're a Tony Robbins girl. You know how to deal with this shit. Yeah. And you know, I've never forgotten that. And so I do believe that if you can only coach where you've come from, you know, yes, can you coach somebody who's had something that you've never experienced? Yes, of course you can. But you can't take somebody to a higher vibration or a higher level of being unless you're there. So I believe that personal and spiritual development is a lifelong journey. I believe we're all a work in progress. And by goodness, will the universe always test us if we think we've got it all.
Absolutely. So, thanks for that. So you've raised a question sort of that I've wanted to ask sort of across a number of different weeks. One of the things that you were just mentioning, though, this this question about like to what degree are you contributing to your own issues that you may be not looking at, is very reminiscent of a transaction analysis approach, which asks the question that makes the statement that you judge yourself by your intentions, but you will judge everybody else by their behavior. And and that ability to just like take that step back and go, yeah, okay. And I know that other people I've spoken to, so hopefully we'll have time to come on this about relationship coaching, where people say, oh, like I've had a number of failed relationships. And until somebody asks them, okay, so what's the common denominator? You're like in all of these, for someone to go, well, yeah, it could be me. Anyway, the question that sort of like I wanted to ask was, or the question I'm going to ask is, where do you think you would be, either collectively or individually, if you had never met Tony Robbins?
It is a great question, and obviously the answer is you don't know, because I think that we do live, life in the moment, whether we think we don't, or we might have a mindset that lives past future, but actually the decisions you do make in the moment. And I've definitely become somebody that has seen things guide me. Like some people believe they've got guides. I'm open to that theory. But they sit and ask their guides for guidance. But I've just sort of basically seen signs. I see signs, and then I decide whether I'm going to follow that sign or not. And so the way that personal development found me rather than me finding it is a great story. And I'll give you the 2-minute version because it's a long story. Is that somebody chose me. So it's a woman who I don't really see much nowadays, and in fact I haven't seen her for years. Who's got a very interesting history. So she was a princess in a small country in South America. So she was brought up with massive wealth, and the dad had a Rolls Royce, and as a baby she's driven around in the Rolls Royce and what have you. Anyway, her mum ended up having an affair with a butler or something like that, and she got completely the mother, and sent to Canada. And as a little girl, this woman went with her. Anyway, she has always had on the go in her in her working life. Each year, she's made it her outcome to help somebody who she thinks is not playing the full enough game. And in whatever year it was, 2000, which is 22 years ago, she chose me. Now, I didn't know she was choosing me. Okay, so it's a very crazy thing, but all she did was to say to me, you need to read this book. Now, I know what it's like. You know, I'm not a massive reader anyway. But if somebody says to you, you need to read this book, it's like, you know, hold on a minute. I just, not only do I not read, I'm there with all my excuses. You know, if somebody tells me I need to do something, I'm not exactly up for doing it. Yeah. Anyway, she was so persistent. You know, I think that it's such a great thing to learn, that persistence is such a gift. It's such a gift. Anyway, every week she would ask me if I bought the book, and every week I'd go no. And I don't know how long this went on for, but you know, months. And I'd see her every Saturday. And then one day she's come in with a Waterstones bag and given me the book. So then, of course, I'm now trying to pay her for the book, and she's going, no, it's on you. So then, of course, every Saturday I took it and put it on my desk. Every Saturday she came in and said, have you read the book? So of course I had to say, no, I haven't read the book. You know. Anyway, just by chance, and this is why I go, look, my life's a game of two halves, because if that woman hadn't have bought me that book, I don't believe my life would have changed, because I was living at that 95.8. I saw my life like that. And, yes, I had money, cars, houses, and all of that stuff that you think is going to make you happy. But I didn't realise how unhappy I was. I just thought this life was, as I had it, I was privileged because I had more than a lot of people. And, in many ways, I should be grateful for what I have got. But it was discovering that I wasn't happy and then questioning myself as to what's in my gap, which is such a great coaching question. What's in your gap? And then deciding to discover what was in my gap. So going out of my way to go, right, if I'm not, I just decided I was, scored on this little game thing that I play, call it the happy test. I scored 54 out of 100. So I'm like 5.4 happy out of 10. And I thought, wow, what would it be like? This is a great question. What would life be like if I found out what was in my 4.6? And it was, revolutionized my life. So I think that because the book she bought me was obviously a Tony Robbins book. And then what happened one day is I read a little bit of the book. I don't know how many pages, but it wasn't a quarter of the book. But I did pick it up. And as I read it, I wouldn't say I'm an angry person. It's not my natural place to go. Certainly not externally angry, maybe a little bit internally angry. But I felt myself get a little bit angry that what I was learning from this book was not taught to us in school. Because I'm 47 years old and reading this book. And I'm thinking, I didn't do well at school, left when I was 15 and a bit. And I found school incredibly difficult. I'm a bit dyslexic. So, I made my way in a world where technically, in the education system, I was seen as a failure. And, when I started to read this personal development information, I got a bit annoyed that I didn't know this stuff. It was so obvious. So, of course, anyway, she came in on the Saturday and she's asked me the question. I said, I've started the book. And then she said to me, so what's your big learning from what you've read? And I was able to share my biggest learning from the book. And I never read the rest of the book. I remember it being in the back of my car, and I sold my car, and the person who bought my car got the book for free because I'd left it in the back, back of the seat, So hopefully it helped them as well, So I never read the whole book. But the thing that I realised, which was my big first takeaway, is that the beliefs that I held that had got me where I was were, and obviously Tony Robbins calls them limiting beliefs. So I realised I had a whole set of beliefs that were keeping me in a state of stuckness, should we call it. But at the time, I didn't know I was stuck. I thought it was normal. So I've unravelled that I am stuck and that I've got this gap and that my beliefs are my biggest challenge. And my other big realisation was that the beliefs I actually held were not mine. I didn't, primarily from my parents, or the education system or social life, the whole load of beliefs about life which were not serving me as a human. And so I think that if that woman had not come into my life and bought me that book, I dread to think, would I still be half happy? I don't know. You don't know, do you?
Yeah.
It's like,
well, the likelihood, if you go with the philosophy of coaching, the likelihood is you wouldn't stay half happy. It would actually get worse, because there's a part of us that knows, whether we've done any personal development, whether we've had any coaching, I believe there's a part of every single human being on the planet that knows what a better life feels like, if you know what I mean. My answer to the question is completely different. I was already on my journey before I met Tony Robbins, and I was trying to think, when Tony was talking, what could be valuable about what I completely unconsciously did. And I think, I have my dad to thank for this, because I was brought up to, quote unquote, just do what makes you happy. So I never went for security ever in my life, never have, never felt like it was necessary to be in security. And so many of the population, if you look at David Hawkins' work or whatever, are looking for security, and therefore they have, you could almost argue in Tony's terms, half a life, because they're looking to get it all, get all the protection around them, and the ego will help that, because it will keep you safe. And so what happened for me was that I was, very long story short, I finished up working for a company when I was 31. So, before that I'd worked for myself, because we were an entrepreneurial family and stuff. And I literally joined this company, and I've always had a belief, and this is where beliefs can be so helpful. It's like Tony's going, he recognizes what the limiting was. I had a belief that somehow special things will happen for me. Now you might go, well, that's all right for you to say, Nicki V, because special things have happened to you, but I actually have a belief they're going to happen, right? And so I go and join this company, this massive company. I didn't even know what a photocopier was. That's how bad it was. I was just like, I'd had a snooker club with my ex-husband, Nick's dad, and we'd had our own little snooker club. We got divorced, and so I looked in the paper for a job, and I got this job as a manager of snooker clubs. And by accident, about 10 weeks after that, we got taken over by an even larger company, and they said to me, what would you do with these businesses? I said, I'd do that, and that. And so they went, oh, there you go. There's £1 million, go and do it. So I thought, oh, this is very nice, and I had loads of fun. So I was with this large organization. Things kept happening to take me up and up the scale. And I left school with 1 O level at 15. I mean, I'm not an academic at all. I can't be arsed with it, And so like, I'm all of a sudden in a situation where I'm running all these businesses, I'm having a ball, and I'm really using what I learned when I was entrepreneurial to how make a load of money, right? And somebody came to me and said to me, look, I know that you keep doing this training with your managers, like nobody else does that. And I said, well, how the hell are you supposed to get them to do better if you don't spend time with them? And so he went, well, look, I'll tell you what I want you to do. I want you to become the trainer for the whole company. This was like 75 million turnover, 3,000 staff, a big leisure company. So I got this opportunity, got a better car, more money, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't ever think, oh my God, I'm going into this job, and people go, oh, like if the recession comes, that job will disappear. I just thought this is going to be more fun. And so I started training, and the very first person that walked into my office to try and sell me training coaching was someone who shared to me about the philosophy of psychometrics, the DISC. I'm trained in DISC, right? So this is like early 90s. So this is now 30 years ago. And I believed in the philosophy of it. We're all different. We've all got different fears, and we're all going to operate. And so much of it is you're going to operate how you were brought up. And I was brought up to, go, look, don't look for certainty, look for fun, right? So I was then a trainer of this within the organization. I used to train psychometrics, I used to train operational skills and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, somebody came and sat at the back of my room and said, you know, I've had a great time with you on this training, but I think you'd like this, and gave me a set of audio tapes of Tony Robbins, which clearly I ignored completely, threw in the bottom of the cupboard. And then the universe decided I had to have quite a serious operation, and I listened to them and my world was changed. You know, I mean, so had I not come across them, I think I'd still be training human psychology. I think because I was fascinated by it. And as you said, David, it made me look back and go, for goodness sake, no wonder my first marriage was, you know, hopeless. No wonder my second marriage, which I was in at the time, was not working. I was the common denominator. What am I doing? Which I'm thinking I'm doing everything perfectly. What am I doing that's actually messing up the very part of life that I wanted the most to be successful? And so that was my huge. I think I'd have always been around it, but I don't think I would have been the kind of coach I am without Tony Robbins. You know, I've been very privileged to spend a lot of time with him, as Tony and I did when we were platinum with him and stuff, on holiday with him and stuff like that. And, you know, I think the one thing, and I know you haven't asked me this question, I think the one thing that if you were going to say to me, you know, tell us what, you know, I told you, I think before we came on air, that he was sharing what he believes is his purpose, which is to teach you how to get in a great state, even when it's difficult, and then how to live it. That's his purpose. But I had an experience once when I was assisting him, when somebody told me, you need to go and make sure that, you know, this line of people that are going to have a photograph with Tony, you know, you need to go and sort it out, right? And I thought, oh God, you know, I'm going to have to get really tough with these people because they're going to be trying to take all his time. And the person said, no, you're going to have to get tough with Tony because he won't let people move on. He wants to help people so much that he wants to talk to people all night. And that for me was such a huge learning that I went, just because somebody's up on the stage and they've got a huge following and everything, the biggest thing they need to be is somebody asked me I think it was on one of your masterclasses, what's the one thing about being a coach? And I said, being intimate, which I know is a strange word to use, but like to be intimate, in other words, to be fully present. You know, it's a bit like, you know, Vivian Joy, I've been very, I feel quite privileged actually to have been one of your mentors over the years. But like, this is a supreme coach. I mean, off the scale good, right? And like, I have an intimate relationship with Viv. I mean, if Viv wanted to talk to me today, she could ring me up and I'd answer the phone. I think the trouble with some people in this industry is they get above themselves and they forget that it's the one-on-one relationships which create your following and create your business and create so that you can live your purpose. It's that really moves people and touches them.
Very good.
Okay. I'm mindful of time. I'm mindful that I have 101 additional questions that I can't fit into the next 5 minutes, and I'd really like to find out if Sue or Vivian have got any questions.
Sue has a question. We went there.
Yeah. One of the things, Tony, as you were speaking there, I tend to use quotes from movies quite a lot, and there is a quote out of Excalibur that summarised a little bit for what you said, which is where Arthur is presented with the Holy Grail and he drinks from it and he says, "I never realised how empty was my soul until it was filled." And it's always stuck in my mind from a coaching perspective that unless you take somebody somewhere for them to realise, all right, okay, yeah, now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. That is the ultimate.
Somewhere they can't go themselves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, absolutely. You're not. Otherwise, you need to be.
Okay, so oops.
Yeah.
I'm just waving my so it sounds awful, saying I'm waving my penguin claw. I nearly said I'm waving my penguin, which might have been misconstrued by anybody who was just listening but not watching. Vivian, Sue, do you have any any questions that you would like to ask Nicki or Tony in the last 5 minutes that we've got? Auditorily would be great.
Yeah, I just feel like I've just, you know, when you tune into a TV program or a radio program and everything is just, you're so supposed to be there and listen to everything, and it's just amazing. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. So I'm kind of a bit blown away with, you know, and all my thoughts are sort of all over the place in a good way, in a totally good way. So I suppose it's a thought really, and I'm interested in what your response to that is. You know, I'm at the point when I'm just giving up my sort of day job, which I've been doing 60% of the time, to focus on coaching. So I've been having a very small coaching practice, just one-to-one, and absolutely love doing it. And it, you know, and I kind of left it quite late. I'm so 62, left it quite late to get started. So I want to really hit the ground running. And it's like my kind of overall feeling after listening to you talk is all the marketing things, yes, are important, but the key thing is to know what it is, what's in your heart, if you like, that you want to kind of give.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right. It's like, what's your driver? What's your passion?
Purpose.
If that's your niche, then you will get, you know, you fill up with it, and it's that passion that people tap into. And then, of course, you know, so I think, you know, one of the easiest ways marketing wise that you can do, it's like, I love that, you know, one of the things I've always loved doing is help coaches get their very first client. And of course, they tend to think they've got to do all this marketing, when actually I go, look, one of the easiest things to do is to reach out to the people you already know and tell them what you're doing, not because you're trying to get them as a coach, but you ask them for help. You say, look, I'm just going to turn off my day job. You know, I've been giving 40% of my time, and I'm now I love doing this so much. I've helped so many people. Who do you know that I might be able to help? You know, this is what I do. And you've got your 10 words, as I call it. And literally just look, see how many people you've got in your phone book, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, whatever it is you use, and just start moving towards people. And that's what I love about being in uncertainty. It's about, you know, you're just going with your heart, going with your soul, going with your spirit, and then basically the universe will send you people. And so I go, that's the easiest way to market, but it comes from that inner thing. It comes from the heart, as you said, not the head. The head will go, right, how do I do marketing? Right, I've got to do this on Facebook, and I've got to do this, and I've got to have a website. And of course, that takes you away from coaching. So I think,
takes you away from people.
Yes. And I think, you know, we drive this Tesla car, you know, and when we bought the Tesla, one of the things, or probably the key thing that made us buy the car, was the guy who looked after us at Tesla. Because we'd gone to buy a Range Rover. We received, I can't tell you, on a scale of 0 to 10, you couldn't give these people a 1. They were that bad, okay? And even though the experience was so bad, he promised to contact us in the coming few days, and he didn't. So that's what made him go even lower in my expectation. Now, one day we're driving back from wherever, and I said, why don't we just ring the Tesla? I've always wanted a Tesla. Why don't we just go for a test drive? Well, we rung the bloke up from our car, and I said, look, we are this far away, you know, we could be there at whatever. That man, it wasn't the car, it was the energy of the guy. He found us the right car, you know, he's asking loads of questions, you know, and he found us a car. It was more money than we wanted to spend. To be fair, the Range Rover was way cheaper. But you see, he captured a part of us. The part of him captured a part of us. Now, incredibly, so I always go, look, at the end of the day, the reason that we bought that car is because of the best quality customer service you can imagine. It's a custom, and good customer service is person to person. Now, Tesla have made the biggest error on the planet, I believe, a company can ever make. And they have got rid of all the people. So now you cannot buy a Tesla off of a person. We went to buy, because I even thought about buying another one, because we love it so much, and it's much easier for us to have 2 cars. And I thought, there's no way really I can afford 2 Teslas. Even if I can afford the money, in my head, I'm going, that's ridiculous, to be honest. Anyway,
I'm gonna have to call into the
Can I just give Sue just what a couple of tiny bits?
If you can fit them in a minute, yes, by all means.
As you can see, Tony's a great storyteller. Let me just give you, just let me give you one thing, Sue, is that the thing that Tony's talking about now, transfer it into marketing. In other words, don't think about marketing, think about how can I reach the people and let them know what I do. The biggest mistake that coaches make is they don't stay niche. They try and be all things to all people. You need to tell them, forget what you're saying about you need to talk to them. I assist people who have got this problem by working with them in this way. That's your 10 words. And I believe that the other thing, which is in front of me, staring me in the face, is if you keep to your be your best and you show how you are being your best, people will come towards you.
Yeah, they want that piece of you that you know how to do and they don't. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Vivian was saying that
Look at Viv's banner. Yeah. It's her, you see. Yeah. It's not a brand, it's Viv.
Yes, that's true. Excellent. There you go.
Thank you.
And I think that I would articulate that. I mean, the people buy from people. So I think it's an old adage, but it is so true. And I think that that allows you to say, well, look, there are some people that I'm not going to work with because it's just not me. Okay, I can't thank you enough for not just for today, but for all of the sessions that you've done. I would ask those 10 words. So if you can send them through to us, so we will recirculate those. The 10 words, from marketing.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
That's good. It's a little formula.
Yeah, that little formula. And we can circulate that. For everybody else, so we just go away, reflect, and pick out what works for you. I mean, it's just a smorgasbord of information, and all I would say, from a personal point of view, not just from the IAPC&M, is that we all feel privileged that you've given of your time, especially with everything that's going on. The fact that you haven't been